Salve te omnes, and welcome back. In this video, the first of a series of 4, we are going to be reviewing Aeneid Book 4, lines 259 to 361, following the AP Latin syllabus. As always, before we begin, let's have a quick refresh on our color coding. Anything indicated in red is going to be our subject, any word in green is our verb, and words showing up in blue are our direct objects. So, with that out of the way, let's dive in. We are picking up here after a little bit of a jump from our last series of lines in Book 4, and specifically what has happened in the meantime is that Jupiter has sent Mercury down to Earth to tell Aeneas to get himself in gear and get back on the plan. All right, the plan being to found Rome, stop dallying at Carthage. So, when we start off here with ut prima latis tetigit ma Gallia plantis, tetigit, the subject is Mercurius. That's just understood because Mercury is the one who has been flying down to Earth. So, ut primum. This ut, we see tetigit. This is an indicative verb, so we know right away that ut is going to mean as or when. And when we throw it in with primum, we end up with an expression something like as soon as, or perhaps something more like when first, right? Ut primum. So, as soon as Mercury touched the Magalia, these would be the huts, all right, the little the homes and buildings in Carthage, with, we see an ablative of means here, his winged sandals, or technically plantis are feet, the soles of your feet, but by extension we know that Mercury is wearing sandals with wings on them, so his winged feet, his winged sandals. What did he do as soon as he touched down? He sees, conspicit, he catches sight of Aeneon, and then we see this whole line right here describing what Aeneas is doing by means of these participles, fundantem and novantem, each of which has an object of its own. All right, so arches is the object of fundantem, just as tecta is the object of novantem. And of course, this entire expression creates a chiasmus. So, what do we see Aeneas doing? We see him laying the foundation, fundantem, arches, for citadels, and we see him novanteming, renewing or restoring tecta. These would be roofs, but by extension, by metonymy, we get houses, buildings, structures, something like that. All right, continuing on now. Illy here in the next sentence, this is going to be referring to the other person, right? Not Mercurius anymore. That would be, therefore, Aeneas. So, Illy is Aeneas, and we also know that Illy is dative because we remember pronouns have those irregular genitive and dative singulars, ille, ilius, illi. And since there's no plural people here, it has to be singular, so dative. This dative with erat is going to be a possessive dative. So literally, there was for him, but we understand instead simply he had. It's perfectly fine. What did he have? What was there for him? An ensis. This is a gladius, right? It's another word for gladius. It's a sword, synonym of gladius. And the ensis is stellatus. So we see in here the word stella, star. So we know that this word means something like shining, gleaming, inset, something like that. With, all right? With fulva jaspide. Full is the adjective, tawny, jaspide is the noun, jasper. So, or jade. So the sword is set with precious stones and que. Now we have, instead of a sword, we have a laina. This would be a cloak. And we see that this cloak was ardebating. It was not on fire, obviously. He's not wearing a cloak of fire, as cool as that might be. Instead, we understand something like gleaming, shining, something to that effect, with turio murice. All right, turio murice. This would be, the murex would be the shellfish that gives us that peculiar purple dye, which is from the area around the city of Tyre in the Near East. So Tyrian purple, all right, a very rich and expensive thing. we see, continuing on, that the laina, the cloak, was demisex humeris. So since we're talking about a cloak, we understand draping or draped or descending, okay, going down ex humeris, from his shoulders, an ablative of place from where. And then these two things collectively, the ensis and the laina, are munera. So when we read this, even though munera comes later, this is an example of prolepsis. The dives quae has come in front of the munera, but we understand the munera first. The sword and cloak were gifts, which quae takes munera as its antecedent, even though it is within its own clause. Gifts which wealthy Dido, another chiasmus happening here, obviously. Gifts which wealthy Dido had made, pluperfect tense verb, and she had discreverat the telas. She had separated the threads. This would be the threads that she had used to sew the cloak with, right, by means of slender gold. So the threads are alternating with gold in the cloak, which might explain why the cloak was ardebating, why the cloak was on fire or gleaming brightly in the sun. Okay, let's continue on and scroll down back to Mercurius as our subject here. Continuin vadit. So continuo, the adverb, straight away. In vadit, Mercury approached, or we might say he, started in with these words. His vocibus could be understood. So he spoke. To, this would be, of course, Aeneas, you. Nunc Carthaginis altae fundamenta locas. So stop there for our verb. Now you, and we see, of course, this is a question. So now you are locating or placing the foundations, neuter plural, of Carthaginis altae, of lofty Carthage. This phrase Carthaginis altae might put us in mind of altae Romae, right? Lofty Rome, but instead it's altae Carthaginis. And uxorius, this is an adjective modifying Aeneas, modifying to, although we might end up reading it as an adverb. You are sheepishly, perhaps, or submissively building up this sweet city. That, of course, would be Carthage. Hey, alas, right? Just exclamation, alas. Now, regni rerum tuarum, you can see, are indicated as objects, but they are clearly not accusative. In fact, they are, if regni wasn't clear, rerum tuarum definitely is. They are genitives. Why are they genitive? Well, they're genitive with oblite right here. Oblite, this word is actually vocative, but it comes from the verb obliviscor, which means to forget. And in Latin, when you remember things and forget things, you remember and forget things in the genitive case, which is why regni and rerum tuarum are indicated essentially as the objects of oblite. You who have forgotten. It's kind of tricky to get this vocative adjective into a working expression in English. You have forgotten your kingdom, and literally not your affairs. That's not quite what tuarum rerum means. It means the affairs of your people. All right, so the matters of your people. You have forgotten these things. Okay, keeping on. Ipse. Now, ipse is not immediately clear until we read on and we get to regnator. So ipse regnator, and then deum, of course, makes sense because we know it is deorum, the syncopated form of the genitive plural, which we are used to seeing for words like deus and vir, some of the most common. The ruler of the gods, himself. All right, so of course, Jupiter. The ruler of the gods himself sent me, or sends, again, we're using present tense verbs, but translating them sometimes pastish, sends me to you, just a dative, no tricks there, sends me to you, claro Olympo, from, this would be ablative of place where, from shining Mount Olympus, the ruler of the gods, who, qui goes with regnator, ipse, who turns the sky and the earth with his power by means of his numine, his divine power. So just more description of Jupiter, right? He is the one whose will turns the sky and the lands. Let's go down here a little bit more. He himself orders, and we have to understand a me in here, to be the subject of faire, which then has haec mandata as its object. So he, the regnator, he himself has, or orders me to bring these instructions, sort of understood to you, celeris per auras. Once again, we see this is ending for the accusative plural, es going with auras, through the swift airs. And then these are his words. What are you doing? Quid struis. What are you doing? Or, qua spe. Here's the question here. All right, the question before was quid. Now the question is qua spe. With what hope or aim or goal do you, something to the effect of, teres otia. Otia is free time. So do you waste your free time, or do you spend your leisure in, okay, libicis terris, in the lands of Libya? Okay, so what are you doing? Basically, in English, we would simply say, with what hope are you wasting your time in the lands of Libya? But teres otia, you're expending your free time. You're wasting your leisure, right? Otium specifically meaning leisure or free time. And then he goes on to say, si te nulla movet tantarum gloria rerum. We see a lot of interlockedness going on in this line here with, you've got nulla gloria, tantarum rerum. So if no glory, and then we take the genitive to go with gloria, of such deeds or things, what is this referring to? This is, of course, referring to the fate that has been laid out for Aeneas, which is to found the greatest city in the world. But if the glory of such things does not, we'll take the negative force of nulla here and apply it to the verb moet, does not move you, or move in the emotional sense, does not affect you or persuade you. And if you yourself, the ipse here is you yourself, because we see the verb moliris here as second person singular. If you yourself do not, something like, put your work into motion. Molior means to put into motion, or to set out upon, or to set in motion your laborem. So if you don't we might say, if you don't focus your efforts, is what we might say for moliris laborem. If you don't set your effort or your struggle or your work in motion, super here can just be adverbial, furthermore, or above even what I said before, if you're not moved by glory of such things. Or indeed, furthermore, if you yourself do not set your goal or set your work in motion for the sake of tua laude, for the sake of your praise. All right, something to that effect here is what's going on. If you don't, focus your efforts on your own glory, right? Laus can be glory here. By the way, the brackets here, the square brackets, suggest that this line in some texts is omitted as being spurious, possibly a later insert, but it is here in our AP text, so we're going to read it. So basically, if you're not affected by glory for yourself, all right, and if you're not focused on your own glory, Ascanium surgent et space heredis Iuli. Now we have to scroll down here and deal with the page break. Respice. Look, he commands in the imperative mood. Look at Ascanius. And Ascanius is surgentem. He is rising. This means growing, right, in context. And look also at the hope, or again, promise, right? We, just as we saw spe above in the question, qua spe. The hope or promise of Iulus, your heir. All right, so consider that. Consider that. Iulus, of course, we need to remember, is the same person as Ascanius. This is just a different name that Virgil gives him, so as to connect him with the Julian family. So look instead at your son, who is growing. Look at the hope of your heir, Iulus, For whom, this dative here goes with debetur, to whom is owed. Right? So in English we would just say who is owed, but Latin has to use the dative. For whom it is owed. What is owed? The kingdom of Italia and the Romana Tellus, the land of Rome, or the Roman earth. Something to that effect, right? So even if you're not interested in your own glory, consider the fact that Ascanius is due his inheritance, which would be the kingdom of Italy and all the land of Rome. So, tali ore locutus, having spoke from such a mouth, or with such words, we might say, mouth being metonymy for the words that he spoke, having spoken with such words, Cylenius, which is just a fancy mythological name for Mercury. All right, what did Mercury do? Now, there's a small little mistake right here. We see this word visus, right, being indicated as if it were a subject when in fact, no, it is actually an object. Small little typo there. Visus is the fourth declension noun meaning sight, and it is in the accusative here. It is the object of reliquit. So, having spoken with such a mouth or such words, Cylenius left behind Mercury, left behind the sight of, this is a genitive, mortalis, of the mortal one, so that would be Aeneas, right, of the mortal, Aeneas, medio sermone, in the middle of his speech. So he was saying the words and then he vanished. And procul in tenu ex oculis evanuit auram, he vanished. Ex oculis, we would say from sight, but literally from the eyes, again, of Aeneas. It's the same expression as mortalis visus, basically, ex oculis. Into, and we would, far off into, so he vanished far off, into tenuem auram, into thin air. Right, so Mercury was speaking, and then he just poof, like a god is wont to do, vanished into thin air and left Aeneas behind.